Welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host, Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is Raghu Bala. Raghu, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me, Nitin.
Pleasure is all ours. So let's start with who is Raghu?
I'd like to think of myself as a very simple guy from Singapore who follows technology and became a serial entrepreneur by accident.
Short and sweet. So now that we know a little about you, let's play a little game where we talk about certain themes that impact us as a community. And would love your responses in one word: underrated or overrated. Nothing serious, just a game, right? So when you're ready, we'll get started with it.
Go for it.
All right, let's start with stock market prices.
Overrated.
Inflation?
I think it's about even right now.
Okay, I'll allow you one cheating, but that's fine. What about crypto?
Crypto is probably underrated.
Okay, NFT?
NFT overrated.
Okay, the Great Resignation?
Overrated.
Okay, what about real estate prices?
I'd say overrated as well.
Okay, the metaverse?
Underrated.
Okay, what about startup valuations?
Overrated.
All right, that was fun. Thanks for playing along, Raghu. I really appreciate it. Now let's talk about something that's more closer to you.
Sure.
Tell us what is NetObjex and the size and scale, the mission, and who's your ideal customer.
So basically, if you look at technology as a kind of on a big landscape, you've had the gig economy, sharing economy. Now you're having the creator economy with NFTs and so on. We are a company for the machine economy. So we started to build this platform that serves basically automating processes. But taking different classes of assets like digital assets, physical assets, and what we call dynamic assets, water, carbon credits, and so on, and tokenizing them, and then enabling fractional ownership and creating liquidity. So basically, every class of asset becomes a fintech asset at the end of the day. So that's what our platform does. We're about 70 people.
Wow.
And we raised about $4 million seed capital a couple of years ago. Right now, we're in the process of a big transaction that's going on. I can't disclose all the details, but some news to come in the coming weeks.
A lot of excitement around it, and it seems like you're kind of in the next phase as people are getting on to Web 3.0. You're almost kind of setting stage for the next set of evolution and innovation that's about to happen. So that's really exciting. You talked about certain numbers, fundraising and such. If you were to talk about impact or the number of businesses or companies you're potentially looking to work with, how would you quantify that?
I mean, our technology is kind of a horizontal platform. It's kind of a sort of domain agnostic, but there are three areas that we focus on: media, supply chain, and smart cities. So our customers fall within those categories typically.
Got it. And this is something that's almost kind of in the future. You're trying to bring the future to the present. So why do this, and why do it now?
So actually, the problem with technology is you cannot build the technology at the time when it's needed. So a lot of technology companies tend to build it ahead of the curve. But in order to sustain during those kind of dry spells, you need funding. So you go out and raise a VC funding with some VCs who have got the foresight to see that where the economy is going, and so that you just have to wait out the period when the timing is right. Of course, you cannot be too far ahead of the curve, then you're going to be really suffering for a long time. But then I'll just quickly mention this, like Docusign, which is very, very popular these days. The company was founded in 2003. They went through a very long dry spell, and then when COVID hit, everyone stopped doing wet signatures and everything Docusign. So the liftoff can be very far in the future sometimes. So you never know.
So true. When it comes to the work you're doing with NetObjex, what's the biggest challenge you're facing?
As far as us, I think we started off as a IoT, AI, and blockchain platform that does what we call cognitive automation. But during the COVID period, when everything shut down at least, one of the difficulties was actually getting things done in the field, so to speak, with the IoT side of things, because no one wanted to go out, and so implementing any sort of field level processes were difficult. But then we shifted our model and moved more on the cloud side of things and moved towards blockchain and other things that sustained us, and that's where we are mostly concentrating these days.
Okay. Like a good startup, making pivots as
You
needed.
have to pivot.
Right.
You have to pivot according to what the industry is telling you.
True. So on the flip side, having made this pivot and catering to the available opportunities, what's the most exciting opportunity you're targeting right now?
Right now, what we are working on is the next generation wallet technology.
Okay.
And so if you look at crypto industry, the wallets are pretty hard to use for an average person. So we are targeting the next generation wallet that will bring about, if you look at the sort of like Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, the early adopters, and now you have the mass market.
Yes.
We're building something that would be adopted by the mass market. That I think is exciting.
And I think the market is ready for something like that. There is, even within the early adopters, there is the true early adopters, and then before the
Fast
early majority comes in, there is a
fast followers.
Yes. So I think we're in that space right now. So
yes,
exciting times. Raghu, as you look back in the rearview mirror, and you've had multiple startups, multiple exits, what's one time that things did not work out as you had planned? But also on the other side, we would love to hear from you an example of when things did work out and allow you to brag a little bit, which you don't do much of, but I would love for you to do that.
Sure. So I mean, for the listeners, I'll say I've had more failures than success, and I think I'm honest in saying that. The issue is with I was part of a startup early on in my career, in my 20s, and I'd joined some people as a co-founder. But the problem with startups and any sort of business is whenever you have partners, and I learned very early on, and I read some books and other things, partnerships are very difficult, and having teams are very difficult. So I've had kind of actually very early on, my first couple of startups I was a partner with someone else, and both those times I learned a lot about them, and I learned a lot about myself. And people grow at different levels, and also you have all kinds of not without going into details, but you can get a lot of rift, and a lot of it can get very ugly actually. And later on, my startups actually I just founded, and I was the sole founder. So if any problems, I just look in the mirror, and I'm the only one to blame. But it's harder to go solo. But you have to have a lot of experience. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. When you're early on, probably you want partnerships, but you have to select your partners very carefully. That can get dicey a little bit. So.
Agreed. I think another way to look at it is you really need to know you, right, and what works for you. And that itself can be a journey, and we need to be cognizant of that as we are working through a lot of these different dynamics.
That's so well put, Nitin, because I think that discovery, even as late as last week, I was just talking to my wife casually, and I said, I literally said, I'm learning more about myself. And, I've been at it for a long time.
Yes.
But even there are certain aspects of myself and how I react to different situations. Even you can't come to put it in words like who you are. And that's so hard. And so, let alone partnering with others. And then then you get these kind of rough edges here and there, and then instead of blaming the other person, sometimes you have to look at yourself as well. So it's so true. So knowing yourself is paramount before you can do anything else or anyone else.
Now, what about that success story? I need you to brag a little bit.
I mean, I have had a lot of successes. Some are in the business world. Some I'll just show you. I'm pretty proud of this. There's a book that's coming out that I'm working with a professor at USC and University of Florida and Miami and University of Massachusetts. So Springer Verlag just accepted our manuscript. So I wrote a book on asset tokenization in a book called Handbook on Blockchain. It's coming out later this year. So I'm pretty proud of it because it's when you put your work out there and it's published by someone which is a big publishing house, it's nice to have. It's just you feel good about yourself. So I like so it doesn't need to be financial success necessarily.
True.
So.
Very true. And congratulations. Looking forward to reading the book.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Now, let's switch gears and come to my favorite part of the show, which is the one-line life lessons. These are lessons, not necessarily quotes. And, I find them to be very simple, but often life-changing. And I would love to hear your one-line life lessons.
I wrote down some cheat sheet for myself, so I'm just going to peer over to that once in a while. But first one is, I'd say, and this people would have heard, it's not how many times you fall, but how many times you get up. And that's actually true with my latest startup, the NetObjex. I'll be honest, I could have personally gone bankrupt a dozen times during this process. I mortgaged my house, I took a lot of loans, I took short-term revenue-based finance. I did everything under the sun to keep the company afloat and things like that. But I got up each time, and each time I was able to overcome whatever adversity. So that's, I think, you need to be like really, really strong as an entrepreneur. That's lesson one. The second one is compartmentalize your life. So, a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you have your personal life, and you're a father, you're a husband, you are a boss, and you have your own inner feelings and your friends and everything. And, I think I personally don't believe that you should let one affect the other. You should kind of compartmentalize. And when I was growing up, my family was well-to-do at one point, but my father went through a lot of difficulties at a particular juncture. And at the same time, I had to compartmentalize because it's the equivalent of the 12th grade, college, almost like high school. And that year is when things went south for us as a family. And I had to keep that side out of my head and focus. And I ended up being, one of Singapore's top President's Scholar nominees that year, despite all of the other stuff that was going on at home. So I always have learned from early on, you have to compartmentalize. If you let it bleed over, then one problem will cause others to go bad. You don't want that. So that's one thing. The third thing I'd say is don't sweat the small stuff. There's a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, but actually it's true. And another way to say it is 80-20. Look at the big picture. Don't worry about all the, everything has got warts and pimples and whatever. It's not going to be perfect. Just have to go with the flow and sometimes don't worry about things. It'll be okay in the long run. True. Sometimes I've noticed many times the fear itself is worse than the actual thing.
Yes.
The next one I would say is, this is some people will say this contradictory to what I said, don't sweat the small stuff, but you actually have to be detail oriented at the same time. So when I say don't sweat the small stuff, don't hold grudges with people or don't, look at the big picture there. But when you run a business, I find that some entrepreneurs tell me, I don't know anything about numbers. You need to know numbers. You need to know marketing. You need to know engineering. You need to know sales. You need to know everything, at least at some level, because otherwise the people who work for you or work with you and so on, they won't be able to, either trust your judgment or anything like that if you yourself are not well healed in some level at this end. So you need to know the details. So,
and to add to that, Raghu, I 100% agree with it. It's also a matter of respect, right? How do you get your team to respect you if you don't you show them you don't care about those things?
Exactly. So that's very important. And the last one is, I'd say, there's a kind of a three-part one, which is be humble. I think if you're not humble, you stop learning. You just think, I know everything. No, you don't know everything. You have to be humble. And you have to be brave. You have to be brave because, a lot of times your life challenges you. You got to just get through it and not be afraid. And the third part of it is don't be insecure. And I think insecurity is one of the, there's a kind of a thing I read somewhere. They say be insecure, but be very little insecure, like 10% insecure, 90% you're very confident about yourself. But insecurity 10% is okay because it'll keep you on your toes.
True.
But once that takes over your persona, that can be a very destructive thing. So be humble, be brave, but don't be insecure, but a little bit is okay because we have to keep learning and all that. That's okay. So those are my sort of like, I put it down because I wrote it down because I've been through all of this. I kind of lived this list actually.
Yes. Thanks, Raghu, for sharing. And for our audience, you'll be able to find Raghu's online life lessons, but also an entire collection on onelinelifelessons.com. Raghu, thank you once again for making the time to be with us, to share your journey with us. We really appreciate it. And congratulations to you for the upcoming book and for the upcoming exciting news that hopefully we'll be able to share with our audience pretty soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.